Ask it.
Ask it.
Ask it.
Ask it.
Ask it.
Welcome to the Ask It podcast. The Ask It podcast encourages talking about talking, facilitates your own inner wisdom, and rather than providing answers, considers good questions. Today we welcome Simon Matthews, who is a psychotherapist in private practice here in the UK. In our conversations, Simon and I covered a number of subjects, including the latest research and thinking around the use of psychedelics in psychotherapy, trauma and how to release trauma from the body, and also Simon's experience of working with couples. This podcast is divided up into a number of sections, and we enter this first section as I ask Simon about his experience of using somatic touch to release trauma from the body. Keep a lookout for my second podcast with Simon, where we discuss the use of psychedelics in psychotherapy and discuss the latest research.
So if we come back to the idea of trauma, can you talk a little bit about the somatic way that you work and what that means for people and what you do and how you integrate that into your practice?
Somatic experiencing was an approach to resolve the symptoms of trauma pioneered by a guy called Dr. Peter Levine, an American doctor. And he really came to it, I think he'd worked a lot in the trauma field, but one of the questions he asked himself is what is it that animals do that humans don't? Why is it that animals seem to be put in life-threatening situations in the wild? And we were shown videos when we were training of, herds of gazelles with lions stalking them in Kenya or wherever, and there's the lions pounce the animals, there's a flurry of animals flying everywhere. And clearly these gazelles are within inches of death. All their life survival systems are fired up. All that fight energy. Lions actually got a very short span of activity. They can only do about a minute and they're done energetically. But the gazelles would return to the fold, and you could see them doing this little shaky thing.
Yeah.
And literally, they would shake the trauma out of their bodies, and they'd be munching grass. Seconds of having been close to death. So how do they know? What are they doing that we're not? We will have traumatic experiences, but we don't seem to have, or we've lost the ability to discharge all that energy in our bodies, and it sits there, So he started asking that question, and I think where he got to was, what the gazelles aren't doing is standing there going, God, you nearly died just then. Yeah. That's awful. Yeah. And why, what were you thinking, being with these other gazelles? And when the lions were out there, we go into our heads, we try and process everything through the mind. And this is not a mind problem, this is a body problem. It's the body, all the body's survival systems are fired up, survival systems which we need and are really important to get us out of the way of a London bus or whatever. But we don't, the problem is that we turn it over and over and over again. We try and resolve it in the mind, and this prevents the body from doing what it wants to do, which is just let it go. The body's got no interest in sitting on trauma that's not relevant anymore, but we seem to lock it in by thinking too much. So somatic therapies and somatic experiencing falls under an umbrella of a number of different somatic therapies. Is a way of talking to people. It's mainly talking. Certain amount of touch is used, therapeutic touch, obviously with client's permission. And it's a way of bypassing the mind. So the mind really has no role to play. It's not about retelling the story of what happened. Other than initially the therapist needs to know, obviously, what they're addressing.
What the story was.
Yeah. Initially. And it encourages the clients to start to develop a language of sensation, of inner sensation, which for some people is quite hard because a lot of people haven't really felt into their bodies and felt what's going on in there. It works rather like EMDR does, with establishing, initially you're looking for trying to help people find some sense of safety in their bodies. The understanding is that the body has experienced something that overwhelmed its capacity to organize a defense. Whatever happened. It was too much for them. It happened too fast. There was no opportunity to adapt. So the body's still in a state of shock. But if you can find somewhere in someone's body where they can say, actually, here I feel safe, then you've got something you can work with. Even if it's my big toe. Here in my big toe, I feel okay. Right, we can work with that, you know? So we encourage people using, there are a variety of methods we use, but we try and help people find something that we call a resource, something in their life, uncorrupted by the trauma, that can still give them a feeling of safety in their bodies. Now that might be a relationship, it might be a faith, it might be their cat, their dog. Often actually it is an animal, sometimes a childhood animal, something that when they visualize it, it produces a sense of safety in the body. And a lot of the first early start of the work in that particular somatic modality is helping that, bedding that in a way that it can be appreciated on a sensation level, so that someone can actually say, yes, when I think of my pet cat when I was a child, I get this warm glow in my heart, and I notice that my tension in my body recedes and my shoulders drop a little bit, and my breathing starts to become a little deeper. And then right, we have something here. And using that as a kind of safe place to work from in the body, one can then take small forays into enemy territory, if you like, into those parts of the body where the trauma is still held. And I say small because a key understanding in somatic experiencing is we do not ever want to put the nervous system back into a state, that it originally suffered.
Yeah, where you're going to re-traumatize.
Yeah. So you're taking very little bits of activation. It's a process they call titration, and you're putting just very little. Initially, you start very tiny little bits of, maybe someone holds a lot of fear in their tummy somewhere, and maybe we just go very close, just towards that area, enough to feel it, and then back to safety. So it's a kind of negotiation between the place of safety in the body and the place where the activation or the trauma is held. And you go very slowly and gently backwards and forwards. And each time you go backwards and forwards, you're starting to build resilience again. And that's essentially what the work is. It's slow. It's for some people get frustrated. They want it now.
Yeah.
And often traumatized people have quite activated nervous systems. They're quite agitated. They want quick results.
Yeah. Because it feels so unbearable, doesn't it? Anxiety, trauma, it's just so unbearable, isn't it? Real suffering, like mental torture.
I totally get it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of sort of psychoeducation that has to happen, in explaining to people this is not going to be fast. It's not crash bang wallop. That's part of the problem in the first place. But whatever happened to you was too much. So we're doing it very slowly. And another key part of it is telling them that whatever, a lot of people judge themselves. Why can't I get over this? There's a lot of guilt, self-blame, shame around holding on to these experiences alive in the psyche. Yeah. And people need to understand that their body is doing an intelligent thing. Even if panic attacks, obviously extremely destabilizing and frightening, but the body is responding as it was designed to. Mm. It's not wrong, it's just that the threat isn't there anymore. But the body itself is intelligent, and we need to have a bit of compassion for our bodies. They are trying to respond to dangerous situations. And sometimes we can be really unkind to our own bodies as they do something that's entirely natural to them.
Yeah, I think I love the way you explained it right at the top of that section, because the body, when we think about it, the body can only ever be in the here and now, can't it? It's a physical thing, it's in the now. But the brain can be past, future, ideas, imagine all sorts of things that aren't happening. The body's going to respond to what is happening now. But the trouble is, it can't differentiate between the mind creating a fearful situation and actually being in a fearful situation. That's why when we withhold reality in order to watch a film or some kind of Netflix box set or whatever it is, that's why we get so absorbed and the thing becomes believable as a narrative. It's because we've suspended belief, haven't we? So the body doesn't know. When you're watching a horror film and you're like and your whole system's going, it's because the system thinks on some level, I'm really experiencing this. So when you were explaining about the difference between animals and humans are, as far as we know, the only species that knows that they're conscious, and that's wonderful. I mean, look at the wonderful things we've been able to do, but it's hideously unhelpful with anything traumatic or anything that really will want to move beyond, because the mind, we're programmed, particularly in the West, we're programmed to believe that we can think our way out of anything. We're problem solvers, aren't we? We're solution focused. Yeah. So we're constantly using the brain to try to get out of the problem, and the problem isn't in the brain. Not really.
Well, that's largely a result of the way we're taught at school. It's easier to tell children that, look, the brain is a kind of computer type thing, and it sits there and it runs everything, and the body takes messages from the brain. And that's how most of us were brought up at school. It turns out it's not the case. I mean, it never was the case. and actually, it's a far more sophisticated system. And there's actually more information flowing to the brain than there is from the brain down. This idea that the brain is kind of pushing out commands to the legs and all our organs. That is not how it is. Yeah. The brain is receiving information all the time from all around the body and assimilating that information. But very few of us, we were brought up in school as, yes, our minds will be our salvation, and the main way we will orientate ourselves in the world. But very few of us were taught that our bodies have got something to say, and that our bodies are sophisticated instruments, and to sit and listen to our bodies, that they have intelligence, and that there are millions of neurons surrounding our heart, millions of neurons in our gut, and that there's information flow that we need to listen to. So it needs to change. I mean, I think in some schools, though, I do understand that meditation and mindfulness practice is coming in, and they're starting to teach kids to sit and be still and listen to their bodies, which is wonderful.
And a lot of this stuff we know, don't we? We know it intuitively. We do it instinctively. So if you bash your arm, you sort of rub your elbow, don't you? Because it hurts, and that's where all the nerve endings are, and I'm going to rub that and shake it. If you watch, on any Saturday when all the little kids are practicing their football, and one of them has a bad tackle or falls over, you'll hear the coach saying, okay, run it off, shake it off, so we know, we have those instincts, or, shake it, this shaking thing. And yet if you're with someone and you've experienced a trauma and you're crying and you're in distress and you're shaking, what that person will do when they're trying to think about how to make you better is try to stop you shaking. Go, come on, you'll be all right. Try to cut into that crying process. And the way I look at any kind of feeling response is that it's like waves coming in. And the real problem isn't the wave coming in. That might be a little wave. It might be, God forbid, a tsunami. But it's got to come in, and then it's got to go out again. And we thwart a lot of that natural process because we're so fearful of being absolutely annihilated by the waves coming in and then going out again. To me, that's a good metaphor for what needs to happen in the body.
Totally. And one of the great things, if one's running a somatic experiencing session, the shaking is a wonderful sign of trapped energy starting to discharge out of the body, and it's something that we totally look for. But people people do get a bit freaked out by it. Suddenly their body starts shaking and they don't understand why. The mind goes crazy, and so we have to tell them, no, don't worry. This is exactly what needs to happen. This energy has been sitting in your nervous system. Now you are discharging it. And there's that wonderful. I'm sure. Do you know about TRE?
No.
TRE is an approach to trauma. I think it's called. I can't remember. I could look it up, but it's basically a shaking exercise to help the body let go of trauma. Practiced in town halls and church halls and community centres all around the country. Pioneered by an Italian doctor called Dr. David Berselli. It stands for, I've remembered, trauma release exercise. And it basically a series. You go in, you don't have to tell any of the story of what the trauma was or where you got it, and you're taught and you're trained about 6 exercises you do, which basically there's 6 kind of very gentle stress positions you put the body in, holding onto the back of a chair, a wall, sit. Perfectly tolerable exercises. And what they do is they set up some involuntary tremoring in the lower half of the body. And you lie on the floor, and your body just starts to shake. And it's an extraordinary thing. And I've done it. And the body's going, and you see your legs are shaking, and you've got no control over it, and your mind's going, this is strange, definitely. But you're there, and you're being held. And it seems to release something from the body. I can't explain it. I know it's been used in big traumatic situations, like kind of earthquake situations, where you have a lot of people that need some relief very quickly, and this can be taught to people, and it's been an extraordinary thing. And a number of clients have gone to do it. It's TRE. If you look it up online, you'll find it. And the great thing is, it's cost it's 15 quid. You don't have to go to see a therapist, and you don't have to tell the story of it.
Yeah, I was with somebody not so long ago, and they had taken some cannabis oil for medical purposes for anxiety, and they didn't get the dose right, and they'd taken a bit too much, and so you could say that they were suffering overdose, really. And one of the symptoms was this extreme shaking, like the whole body shaking. And I just said, look, just go with it. Just absolutely let the body do its thing. It's just trying to process it. And it was very frightening for them, and they'd got no frame of reference at all, and not used recreational drugs or anything like that before. But I knew enough to know that was just the body doing its thing, and to trust it. And I think the key thing, as you just said, is trust the body. The body, you don't have to think you don't have to think about your digestion, do you? You don't have to think about lifting your leg up. You don't have to think about any of these things. And you don't have to think about the body processing trauma. It knows what to do. In a way, we've just got to get our minds out of the way, it seems to me.
That's it.
Yeah.
Getting the mind out of the way. And of course, on that subject, meditation forever. Whatever, meditation's got to be a good thing. Anything that helps relegate the mind a bit. Mindfulness practice, meditation practice, it's just got to be a good thing. At some point, I will try and get all my clients to do at least a little bit of it.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you.
Hi everyone. If you like asking questions like me, please like and subscribe. Thank you.